Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started as people continue to enter the webinar, but that's okay. Okay, so welcome to today's webinar, part of Seed Fund Week, sponsored by the SBA. Today, we are going to cover a very high-level overview of the SBIR and STTR programs. My name is Dana Catron. I will be hosting the webinar today, and I am Deputy Director of Arrowhead Center at New Mexico State University, and I also am Director of our New Mexico FAST program, which is our SBIR and STTR support program. I also want to go ahead and introduce Stephanie Garcia. She will be monitoring the chat today, so if you have questions that come up during this webinar, feel free to drop them into the chat, and we will try to get to as many as we can towards the end. And then she'll also be running some polls throughout the webinar as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to message her or drop it in the chat. We're here to help. If I can run my webinar, let's see. Okay, so the purpose of today's presentation / webinar is really, again, to become familiar with the SBIR and STTR programs from a high level. As you start to learn more about these programs, you'll see that you can go very, very far into the rabbit hole because they're pretty broad, they're pretty extensive. There's a lot of different agencies that participate in them. And so this is just to give you a taste of whether these programs are a good fit for your business and your innovation. We'll go again very briefly into what that proposal process looks like. Again, for like first-time applicants, things like that. It's good to know this up front before you start to try and navigate it, because it is a pretty hefty process the first time you go through it. And then the last thing we'll cover today is SBIR and STTR proposal development resources. So resources that you can take advantage of. I know there's a lot of businesses, a lot of participants here today from all across the United States. And so we collated the resources that are applicable to everybody. So you will have to go to your state specifically for more information on some of these, but we'll give you a pretty good overview. And looking at the chat, yes, this presentation will be PDF'd and shared with everybody after the presentation, so probably later this afternoon. And we'll also have the recording available as well. So we'll get that up on YouTube, so you can, if you missed anything, you can go back and watch it. But going into the two programs. So SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation Research. STTR, we call this a sister program. This is the Small Business Technology Transfer Program. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about the differences between these two programs in a little bit. But basically, these programs were developed and started to help startups and businesses like you get your high risk, high impact technologies and innovations into the commercial market. So everybody knows there's not a whole lot of capital available for early stage technology development. And so that's really what these programs were designed and created to do. Some of the broader goals of these programs, obviously, to meet the federal R&D needs by providing research dollars to small businesses like yourselves, to increase private sector commercialization of innovations and technologies that are derived from federal R&D funding, to stimulate technological innovation, to foster and encourage participation, innovation, and entrepreneurship by socially and economically disadvantaged persons and businesses. And then more specific to the STTR program, to foster tech transfer by having small businesses and research institutions or RIs work together on these projects. Before we go any further, I wanted to bring up eligibility. So are you eligible for these programs? If you can answer yes to these, then yes, you are. So number one, you must be organized for profit with a place of business located in the US. We get a lot of inquiries from nonprofit organizations to see if they are eligible, and unfortunately they are not. So must be for profit. Over half or 50% must be controlled by one or more individuals who are citizens or permanent aliens of the US, or by other small business concerns that are each more than 50% owned and controlled. If you have questions about any of these eligibility requirements, I encourage you to reach out either to us or to one of the resources that we talk about a little bit later, because we can tell you pretty quickly if you are eligible or not. And then the last thing is you must qualify as a small business as defined by the SBA. And basically that definition is less than 500 employees. So if you have less than 500 employees, which most people do, you're qualified according to that definition. The other thing I did want to bring up too is the focus of these programs is to perform R&D. Remember, it's for high risk, early stage innovations and technologies, things probably wouldn't get funded by more traditional mechanisms because it's too early or it's too risky, like that. So these programs are not really designed to for purchasing equipment or for commercializing a technology that has already been developed, is already in the market, things like that. Or maybe it's very, very low risk and it just needs capital. Obviously, there are exceptions, obviously on a case-by-case basis. Again, I'm going to be reiterating this throughout the webinar. I encourage you to reach out to one of the support organizations like a FAST site to kind of talk through your innovation or project or what you want funded to make sure that it is a good fit before you spend the time to put together a so some things that you'll probably want to consider before looking at these programs. Do you have an innovation or technology? We'll talk about this in a little bit. We talk about technology. It doesn't necessarily need to be high tech. It just needs to be innovative. So we'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that in a couple slides. But is it innovative? Do you know who your customer is? So even if your customer is perhaps the Department of Defense, do you know what their needs are, what they want, what they're interested in? This has become more and more important with the SBIR programs and STTR programs compared to, say, 5 or 6 years ago. Can you translate the scientific method into a work plan? So we see this a lot, especially with academic PI. We're very used to research and development university or research institution and trying to take that into a for-profit work plan where it's a little bit different. So being able to do that is really key. Do you have a really good understanding of your business case? Can you follow directions? We will talk about this later, but this is the number one reason why proposals get thrown out is the directions were not followed. There's a lot of different registrations that are involved with these programs. We have a slide on this here in a little bit, so making sure you have all those. Do you have a good team of partners to do the work, to do the project? Are you financially ready to do the work? Again, this would be a government contract, so you need to be ready to manage those funds. And then do you have good time management skills? This goes both for the proposal development side along with the project management side if you are to get that award. So you need to be able to manage that time efficiently. Okay, so then as I scare you with all of those things, why consider SBIR and STTR? This is our favorite program. This is personally my favorite program because number one, it is equity-free investment in your company. We call it non-dilutive funding. So the government is not going to take any part or any ownership in your business. They are not going to expect you to pay that money back like a loan. And so you have a lot of freedom there to do, again, R&D. So number one, equity. Number two, it allows you to demonstrate the feasibility of your idea, or your innovation at those early stages. It also allows you to start building up your team, building your company for success. There are a lot of incredibly successful large companies now who were built from SBIR and STTR funds. It can also provide due diligence for follow-on funding. So we work very closely with investors, with other organizations to provide funding, things like that. And they love to see SBIR STTR on a company's track record, because it shows that there is some traction in your company. Somebody has already invested in development of that innovation or technology. So we've seen companies who have SBIR and STTR do really, really well once you get to the stage where you're looking for venture funding investment. It also allows you to map your product and value proposition to your intended customer. It reduces the need for you to self-fund R&D, which we all know can be very, very expensive. There are unique IP and data rights tied to SBIR. Okay, I apologize. I lost internet. So we are going to try this again. Okay. I think this is where we left off, and hopefully my hotspot will not disconnect. Okay, so looking at the two programs broadly, SBIR and STTR, they both support R&D and financing of innovative technologies. For SBIR, that equates to about a $3.8 billion annual set aside. And the way they calculate that budget is it's 3.2% of the extramural research budget for all agencies with a budget greater than $100 million per year. So what that means essentially is if an agency that does not currently have a budget over $100 million, if they were to exceed that mark, they would then be required to participate in the program. Likewise, if an agency loses some budget and it drops below that $100 million mark, they would not have to participate in the programs anymore. I've been in this for many, many years now, and I've never seen that happen, but just know that it could. So it all depends on, again, that research budget. For STTR, again, we call this a sister program, again, designed to encourage partnerships and collaboration between research institutions and small businesses. Research institutions are institutions like universities, like national laboratories, things like that. If you have any questions about what counts as a research institution, like if you're trying to decide if you want to do an STTR, again, we're happy to answer those questions, or someone from your state, which we'll get to at the end, is more than happy to do that as well. For the STTR, there's a little bit of a difference in terms of how many agencies participate and what their budget is. So their budget is based off of 0.45% of the extramural research budget for agencies with a budget greater than 1 billion, so much bigger. So there are 5 different agencies that participate in that, and that equates to about $518 million per year. One thing we wanted to emphasize is you as a small business will always be the applicant and the awardee. So even if you're doing an STTR with a large federal laboratory, you would still be the applicant and the awardee. So something to consider. And then what all of this kind of equates to is over 7,000 new awards every single year to small businesses. Okay, so so this is just a chart that kind of shows the breakdown between SBIR and STTR in terms of how you can use that money. So with SBIR, you are allowed to subcontract, and you are allowed to work with a research institution. That's totally fine. You can subcontract up to 33% of your award to somebody else. For STTR, it's required, right? So the research institution has to get at least 30%. That can go up, but that's just at least. Small business has to have at least 40%, and then there's a discretionary 30 or so percent to go either way. So again, SBIR is not required to subcontract. Research STTR, you are required to contract with a research institution.
And Dana, we have a hand raised.
Yes, sure. Do you want to unmute yourself really quick? Or you can just drop it in the chat. Okay, Additional differences between SBIR and STTR. And again, we'll be sharing these slides with everybody, so you have this for reference. And there's a lot of slides on here that I'm not going to go over in a lot of detail. They're more for reference as you go forward with your SBIR journey. But basically, SBIR for partnering. Again, you're allowed to partner. You're allowed to subcontract if you want to, but you don't have to. STTR, you do have to partner with that research institution partner. Principal investigator, PI. We get a lot of questions about PI. So with SBIR, the primary employment has to be with the small business. And questions about this come up particularly when we're talking about faculty at universities or lab employees, things like that. So with SBIR, has to be at the small business. STTR, there's a little more flexibility. The PI can be employed by the research institution or the small business. So there's, again, a little more flexibility. Work requirement, I'm not going to go through that because we covered that in the last slide. IP requirement, this is another one we get a lot of questions on. So SBIR, obviously, if you're not partnering with anybody, especially with a research institution, you're not going to need that formal IP agreement. For STTR, you will need a very formal IP agreement. It is required. It does not have to be, it has to be signed prior to the award, but obviously these things take a lot of time. And so if you're interested in either of these programs, start early, but especially if you're interested in STTR, start very early because having work and we work out of a university. We are the IP and Tech Transfer Office for New Mexico State University. It just takes a long time. There's a lot of back and forth and it takes time. So start early. Agencies who participate. So there's 11 or 12 if you count. We'll get into that in a minute, but essentially 11 agencies for SBIR, 5 for STTR. And then the program size, SBIR is much bigger, again, because there's more agencies participating in it. Okay, so we talk about the different phases of SBIR. So this is a chart that kind of breaks down what we're talking about. So you'll often hear as you're looking at SBIR, people will talk about phase 0. This is not a formal phase of the SBIR and STTR programs, but we kind of call this our proposal development stage. So this is where you can get support from fast sites. We'll talk about who those are again towards the end. There are micro grants available or other funding mechanisms available from many different organizations to help you develop your proposal. And then there's a lot of other support organizations that are there to help you during this phase 0 time. So again, we will talk about those at the end of the presentation. Phase 1 is really your concept development phase. Usually the awards are between 100K to 250K. This varies. I want to say with every solicitation, agencies change this, but generally you can expect from 100 to 250K and usually over about 6 to 12 months. It's a very competitive program. So there is about a 15% success rate of submission across all the different agencies. Now to get to a phase 2, this is really important. You must have a phase 1 to go on to phase 2. There are some very rare exceptions. Some agencies have things that are called direct phase 2s, but again, those are rare. And for the majority of businesses, you're going to have to get your phase 1 before you go to your phase 2. With that being said, though, say you get a phase 1 with NSF, you are then eligible to get a phase 2 with any other agency. So you don't have to stay within that same agency for your phase 2. When you get to your phase 2, this is really for prototype development. So because of that, the funding level is much higher. So usually about $500,000 to about $1.5 to $2 million, again, depending on the agency. And it's over a longer time. So it's usually about 24 months or 2 years. And the success rate obviously goes way up because it's a much smaller pool of applicants who are applying for those phase 2s because they had to have had a phase 1. Some agencies are now introducing a second phase 2. So this is really meant to be like the demonstration phase. And then that moves into phase 3. Now, phase 3 is not funded by the SBIR and STTR program. So important to note that. We talk about phase 3 a lot, but it's really your commercial sales phase. And so there's very, very limited direct funding at this stage, unless you are, say your end customer is the Department of Defense. The DoD may fund you, but they're not going to fund you through the SBIR and STTR programs, if that makes sense. So then what agencies participate in these programs? So there are 11 agencies, 12 programs, because as you can see, under the Department of Commerce, NIST and NOAA are both under DOC. All of these agencies participate in SBIR. The ones in gray are your STTR agencies. And so now, before I show the next slide, it gets really confusing. And so again, this is why this is a very high level webinar introduction. We talk about these programs as like maybe two. There's SBIR and STTR. And then we say, oh, but well, there's like 12, programs that participate, right? And then if you add in the 5 that also participate in STTR, okay, so then that adds in even more. But to add even more confusion to this, within each of those different agencies, they have different components, and each of those may or may not run their SBIR and STTR program like the broader agency. So a really good example is Air Force. Air Force a couple of years ago broke off, and they run theirs completely separate. It's a vastly different program than, say, the Navy. So what this chart will illustrate to you is all of the different components that exist under all of these agencies. So there's quite a few. So it's really important, once you identify what agency or agencies are a good fit for your technology, to then go in and make sure does that agency have multiple components, and do those components run their programs differently, and make sure you're looking at the correct solicitation for what you're trying to submit a proposal for. Again, I'm not going to go into this slide too much, but we wanted everybody to have it. And this just goes over the different agencies and generally what they tend to fund. There's a lot of variation here, though. One thing I do want to also emphasize about agencies is, you may think, say you have a health technology, and so you say, oh, well, NIH is going to be the best fit, or HHS, right? They do health. Don't limit yourself to only HHS or NIH. There's a lot of other agencies who have interests in health-related technologies. A really good example is the Department of Defense. When you think of the DoD, most people immediately think of the warfighter, weapons, things like that. But really, DoD supports everything. When you think of an aircraft carrier, it's essentially a city on the water. So they have needs for everything from health to food to weapon development. So don't limit yourself by pigeonholing yourself into a specific agency because it makes the most sense. It probably does make the most sense, but there are other agencies that you can go after as well. And you can submit to more than one agency for the same project. You just can't get funded, obviously, for the same project by multiple agencies. So there's a lot of differences between the programs and the agencies. Everything from their proposal process, so their submission process can vary, their requirements will vary, the funding levels will vary, the period of performance will vary, the solicitation, so how often their solicitations come out will vary. So just keep that in mind, again, as you start to navigate this. On our website, we have this handy dandy chart. This one actually needs to be updated, but it's a good broad overview of all of the different agencies, if they are an SBIR, STTR, or both, and when you can expect them to open and close, just so you can do some higher level planning as you're starting to develop proposals. Registrations also vary. So you will need 3 registrations for every single agency, and that's your EIN, your UEI, and SBA company registration, and SAM. So get those if you don't already have them. And then for other agencies, you may need additional registration. So just be aware that you may need them and to get registered as quickly as possible, because sometimes they can take a little bit to go through. The same with submission portals. So they do not all use the same submission portal for when you're actually submitting your proposal. So again, make sure you know which one they use and know how to navigate it. We have a lot of YouTube videos on some of the more common ones, but there's a lot of tutorials out there on how to navigate a lot of these portals, because they can be really confusing when you're trying to submit your proposal. So then how do you choose which agency is the most appropriate for you and what you're doing? The advice I like to give when I'm working with clients is try to align your technology innovation with the agency that makes the most sense. And there may be multiple. So if there are multiple, figure out what are their solicitation cycles, which one is the best fit. You can complete a topic search. So we encourage everybody to do this. If you go to the link here at sbir.gov, you can look at different topics. They post everything from open topics, so things that are open now, future topics that are projected to be open, and closed topics for all agencies. And so you can go in and see what has DoD funded in the last year, and then it'll spit all of that out. And so that gives you a really good idea of, does your technology fit with the general theme you're seeing from what has been funded in the past. Some agencies do change their topics frequently, like the DoD. So I, again, pay particular attention to their topics. And then another thing is review the abstracts of past projects. So all of the abstracts will be available. And again, you can see what has been funded so that you can determine a little bit better how you fit. Reviewing the literature cited is another tip we like to give everybody, because often those references can help guide how you develop your proposal. And it tells you, it's an easy way to see what has already been done in this space, right? So other search engines, you can look at grants.gov, FedBizOps, agency-specific search engines. Even Google is a great way to just, figure out a baseline for what has been done in the past and where you might fit. If you're trying to partner with a research institution, and you feel like that might be beneficial, we encourage you to look at STTR over SBIR for a couple of reasons. It's less competitive because, again, there's that partnership agreement. So if that's something you're planning on doing anyway, it may be a better fit. But make sure you have the research team that you need to do the work, facilities and equipment. If you don't, again, that's when STTR may be a better fit, because you could partner with a university who has faculty expertise, who has access to, specific equipment testing, things like that.
Dana, real quick too, in the chat, we just had a question. What's the most efficient way to research active solutions for smart mobility infrastructure?
I would go to the sbir.gov link right here. And you can just type that in. I probably wouldn't type all of that in, type in keywords, and it'll pull everything for you. Yeah. Okay, so to confuse everybody further, these programs use granting mechanisms and contracting mechanisms. So depending on the agency, you may be awarded a grant or a contract. I probably won't go into this too much, but just know that there are differences between the two, and you'll want to know what the agency you are applying to, which mechanism they use, because it'll help determine how your award is managed, right? So grants, less specific topics, things like NSF. NSF is a great example of a granting agency. They have, broad funding areas and mission and things that they're interested in. And if you fit within one of those, you can go after NSF funding. Contracting agencies like the Department of Defense are very, very focused. So they're going to have highly focused topics where they say, we have this specific problem or this specific need, and your technology or innovation needs to be able to address that or solve that. And if it doesn't, it's not going to get funded, right? Grants tend to be more flexible, contracts, not so much. The PI has more freedom with a grant compared to a contract. The scope of work is going to be pretty rigid with a contract. Again, with the use of funds, same with grants, more flexibility. Contracts, you're going to have to do your deliverables and milestones and meet those. There's going to be more fiscal requirements, things like that. So again, chart is here for your reference, but know that there are differences between the two. And then which agencies participate in each. Here's a handy dandy chart. So you can see contracting agencies, granting agencies, and then HHS is the only one who dabbles in both. Again, I'm not going to read this entire chart. This is here for your reference, but basically what this chart has is the agencies, the phase 1 amounts, the phase 2 amounts, phase 1 period of performance, duration, phase 2 POPs, and then the total program funding. So you can kind of get an idea of how big their SBIR and STTR program is. As you can see from this, DoD is the largest program by far. And then data rights and IP protection. So we're only going to touch the surface of this. If you have questions about data rights and IP protection, again, encourage you to reach out to whichever support organization is in your state, and then also go to the USPTO, because they have a lot of very regular and very informative webinars on all of these topics, and they are much, much more informed about all of the current IP, data rights, everything than us. So I encourage you to reach out to them. But basically, as a small business, you will own and have full right and title to the data developed under your SBIR, STTR award. For STTR, I should preface that, STTR is going to depend on what that IP agreement says, right, with that research institution, and that needs to be put together before the award. But generally, SBIR, you own the data developed. It will be protected for a minimum of 20 years. That's a new word change. It used to only be 4, and that's from the start of your award. And then you have to mark SBIR technical data appropriately. Now, the federal government does have limited use of this data, but they don't really use it often. And we work, again, very closely with a lot of the agencies, and most of the time it's used for evaluation of the results of the award. They do receive a royalty-free license for use, again, but I have never, I've been doing this since about 2012-ish. I've never seen a case with any of our clients where the government is going out and using that license or anything. It's just, it's there, but they don't often use it. So again, USPTO, they hold regular webinars. You can go to this link as well. The SBA put together a lot of really great tutorials on different topics. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. And data rights and IP protection is one of them, and they've got a really great tutorial on that. Okay, and then I think, yeah, talking about the backbone of these programs, as we're going to kind of shift into the actual proposal process. But we talk about innovation, and this is what I referenced in the beginning, where it doesn't necessarily mean high tech. We talk about technologies, innovations, things like that, but the SBIR programs fund things that are innovative. So a really great example is a company got funded several years ago now because they developed an innovative process for using comic books for PTSD patients. Now, that's not something you would consider high tech or really even technology, but it was an innovative process. And I believe it was NIH who funded that, that project. So it can come in all kinds of shapes and forms, and it can also start anywhere in the product idea chain. So don't limit yourself if you don't have what is, traditionally considered high tech. The other piece to these programs, and again, this has become more and more important over the last couple of years, is commercialization. So commercial merit. It's one of the founding principles of the Sbir and Sttr programs, and it is emphasized, I guess you could say, a lot in the phase one now. So before, when I started working with these programs, you had to kind of touch on it in your phase one, but it was more important in the phase two. Now you have to have like a pretty solid commercialization plan during your phase one. And that's because they want to make sure that what they are investing in has commercial potential, because again, that's one of the goals of the program. So how do you figure out if your innovation or product has commercial potential? Things like customer discovery activities are really good. A lot of different states, here in New Mexico, there's a ton of different accelerators that are based on customer discovery, things like that, that you can use to figure out, okay, is what I'm doing, does it have commercial potential? And then we also included some questions for you. So if you can answer these questions, you're probably in pretty good shape. So knowing what the demand is and how it's been validated. Do people even need what you're developing? What does the market look like? What are the economic factors that are involved? Things like that. So again, just things to be considering as you as you start to look at, putting together a phase one. And so then looking at the actual proposal process, this is again, super high level overview of the proposal process, because for every agency, it's going to look a lot different. For every business, it's going to look different. So just keep in mind that while we go through this. But generally, the first thing you want to do is determine, are you even eligible? So are you a small business? Are you a for-profit business? Are you primarily US owned? Is the work you're going to do going to be done in the US? Those kinds of things. If you can answer yes to all of those, you're in good shape to move on to, do you have an innovative idea? So make sure what you are working on fits within the program, because you don't want to apply and find out that, they don't think it's innovative. And one of the ways you can do this is talking directly to the agencies. And all of the agencies are very open to talking to small businesses. Some have durations of time when you're allowed to talk to them. So again, try and figure that out. Work with one of us to figure that out. And it's great to talk directly to the agencies. You'll want to complete your registrations. So again, your SAM, UEI, SBA company registration, and then any other agency-specific registrations you may need. And then start looking at solicitations, start looking at topics, figure out, what are those priority problems that need to be addressed? Do you solve those problems? They're not always, or they are always interested in solutions, even if it isn't the approach they want. So that, again, that's a really good reason to talk to them. And maybe you're interested in DoD, but there isn't a topic that fits what you're doing. Still talk to them, because they can, and they have in the past, developed topics around technologies that were of interest to them. So they don't always know what they want or need. So having that communication is really important. Then you're going to develop your proposal package. So we've worked with a lot of different clients over the year. We work with many different other support organizations, and then directly with the agencies. And collectively, if you ask anybody, it's usually going to be about 100 to 120 hours that you can expect to spend on your first phase one proposal. It's very time intensive. There's a lot of different forms that go into it. There's a lot of writing. It's not just writing out, your narrative. There's a lot of different pieces that go into a proposal package. So just keep that in mind, because it is an investment of your time to put one of these together. The actual package components differ a lot depending on the agency. Generally, you can expect to complete some kind of a technical proposal, resumes, bio sketches, things like that, something on facilities, budget, and then again, depending on the agency, different documents. And then the last thing is review. So always secure a third-party reviewer to look through your proposal. This is one of the most important tips we can provide to you, because you would not believe how much you miss because you're so close to that proposal. And even with us, you know, I'm a very seasoned proposal writer. I always get a third-party review because I miss stuff all the time. And so when you're working on something for so long, you tend to miss stuff. And then a reviewer can also help you identify if you're scoping it appropriately, if there's gaps that you're missing, things like that. So again, a lot of support organizations do provide reviews as part of their assistance. We do to any business that's located in New Mexico. We will provide a free proposal review. And oftentimes there's also funds available to do that as well. So just check with your state. At that point, you're going to submit. Don't do it last minute. Do it at least one day before the application is due. Super important. And then you wait. Award notification can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on the agency. So it's not a quick way to get funding, but it's well worth the wait if you do get that phase 1 and phase 2, because again, non-dilutive funding. This needs to be updated, but I wanted to just throw this in here so you can see generally what the process could look like for that proposal creation process. So again, this is specific to our program. This is what we see. And again, it depends on the agency because every agency is going to have different requirements. But we wanted to have a visual that can help people kind of break it into chunks and see what all is involved in the proposal creation process, because it's a lot of different steps. Okay, so we kind of touched on the programs, the proposal. How can you get help if you are interested in doing this? So the first place I recommend looking is SBA funded federal and state technology partnership programs, or FAST programs. We are a FAST funded program. These programs build the SBIR and STTR ecosystem through things like outreach, technical and business assistance, and then many of us do provide financial support to small businesses. So many states are now participating in these programs. To figure out if your state specifically has one, you can go to this link and it lists all the different states, the programs, and then who to contact if you're interested. But again, definitely recommend that you reach out. And then just to kind of see what these programs could look like, this is what we provide through our FAST program. Again, all of our services are free. We are here to help you. And so, you know, we don't want to charge for that. But basically through our NM FAST program, we work with New Mexico small businesses on anything proposal development related. So we'll work one-on-one with you. Every client interaction obviously is customized, and we tailor our services because people come in with varying degrees of experience with the program. So we will work with you if you're a complete newbie to the program or if you've already gotten several phase 2s. It doesn't matter. We will work with everybody. We do proposal packages, package reviews. We do provide microgrants, so up to $2,000 to help with proposal development, or if you want to go to, say, the National SBIR conference, we can help pay for that. We do a ton of free workshops, webinars, engagement activities throughout the state, and then really nationally. We have a lot of partners nationally now, especially through COVID when everything went remote, that we're able to broadcast things to an audience much broader than New Mexico. We've also developed, so regardless of what state you're in, a ton of different tools and resources. So at this link, if you go to the link, we have everything from compliance matrices, checklists, quick start guides, proposal templates, and we keep that updated for every single solicitation cycle. So Stephanie is our main point person for that. And she's working hard to make sure everything is updated all the time for our tools and resources. We also have a monthly SBIR newsletter. So I'd encourage you to sign up for that because, again, it's not New Mexico specific. We just try to collate all of the different agency solicitation deadlines, any events tied to SBIR, things like that. So you know what's going on. We have a pretty robust video series on our YouTube channel that you can go and look at. We do host multi-week SBIR and STTR accelerators. This December, I'll talk about it in a little bit, but we are hosting our annual SBIR STTR Innovation Summit. And then one of our newer activities is the Canvas integration of our SBIR and STTR curriculum. So if you are interested in the programs and maybe you're not ready to work one-on-one with us, or you're not in New Mexico, you just kind of want to explore some of the agencies, you can go to that link, and we've got several agencies now available, and it's self-guided, self-paced. So you can go in and do as much or as little as you'd like on your own time. Another resource I would highly recommend is the Sba Online Tutorials. So these are housed at sbir.gov, and they have 18 different courses. And then within each of those courses, they've got a ton of different, I guess you could call them like modules, that will help you learn more about the SBIR and STTR programs. All of the courses have different formats. So this is really great because if you prefer to, say, watch something rather than reading it, they have audio visual, or if you're like me and prefer to read it, they also have PDF format or multimedia format as well. So there's a lot of different ways you can access the information. And then each course also has different tools. So they have things like glossaries, links, quizzes tied to each of those to make sure that you are getting as much information as you need for each of those. The monthly SBA Innovation Ecosystem Network call. So this call is great. It has exploded in the last, I would say, 2 years. Before it used to be the state reps call, but now it's a broader ecosystem call, and I encourage you to take advantage of it. It's once a month, the last Thursday, usually from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. I think for November and December, they may have a different schedule, but if you go to the link and sign up, you'll get all the information. And it basically covers issues around policy outreach training, everything tied to SBIR and STTR. And they bring in guest speakers every month, SBIR program managers, support orgs, things like that. And so it's a great way to stay up to date on what the different programs are doing, what the policy looks like, things like that. PTACs and PTAPs. If you have not engaged with this organization, I encourage you to do so. They help businesses compete successfully in the government marketplace. Every single state has one or many of these centers. Most of their services are free. You can meet with counselors. They're great. We send all of our FAST clients there to help with things like registrations. They will sit down with you and get you registered for everything. They do a ton in compliance, cybersecurity. I mean, all of those different things, they are an excellent resource. So we partner with them frequently and definitely try to drive as many people as we can, because I feel like they are an untapped resource. And again, available in all 50 states. Okay, small business development centers, or SBDCs. These are another great resource. They provide training, counseling. They have a ton of different services, and there are SBDCs all over the country. Every single state has them, and most larger communities will have them. So this link, you can find your local SBDC, reach out to them. Again, they have counselors, and they're a great resource as well. The last one, I think this is the last one, but the SBIR and STTR agencies are obviously a great resource for their programs. So I encourage you to go to their individual website and sign up for their email newsletters, because they will send out every time a solicitation is coming out, every time there's a change to the program, they will email that out through their network. And so they, sbir.gov has collated all of the different websites, so you can just go to that link and then they'll all be right there, and you can click on whichever ones you are most interested in. Okay, and then last thing I wanted to talk about is some upcoming programs and events that are open to the entire country that may be of interest. So the first is our ACSA program. This is our SBIR Accelerator. We will be doing one that's focused on the Department of Energy through our Clean Energy Cluster. The only caveat with this is you have to be a part of the cluster to be in the cohort, but it is not limited to New Mexico-based businesses. So if you're interested in this, the link is right here. It is a 12-week, very intense program, but you will develop your LOI, your proposal package. Everything is kind of housed within those 12 weeks. So it's a great program if you are interested in the Department of Energy. We are doing a SBIR 101 accelerator. This one is only open to New Mexico small businesses, and applications are due next week. But again, this is going to be a introduction to the programs. It'll be 5 weeks long, and by the end of it, you should reach a go or no go decision on whether these programs are appropriate for what you're doing. Again, New Mexico only for this one. We will be hosting a procurement and contracting webinar with PTAC on September 1st. This is open to anybody. And if you're interested in getting started with procurement, procurement as it relates to SBIR, things like that, this is a great webinar to take advantage of. We don't have the Eventbrite information yet, but if you sign up for a monthly newsletter, the link will be included there.
We actually do have it. I just dropped the link for that on the if anyone
perfect. All right, so Stephanie has the link in the chat if you're interested in that one. And then last event, Mesas to Mountains SBIR Summit. So this is a collaboration between us, Montana State University, the University of Idaho, and the University of Alaska. And this event will be, again, open to everybody. It's going to be a 2-day SBIR focused event. You'll have the opportunity to do one-on-one sessions with program managers. There's going to be a lot of great panels. So definitely take advantage of that event. It'll be October 11th and 12th, and you can find more information at this link. And I think more information for that will be coming up soon. And Stephanie dropped it in the chat as well. And okay, one more event, our Innovation Summit. So this is a great event that we run every year. It's in December, so this year, December 14th. And again, there's panels that will break down the SBIR, STTR process. We bring in program managers. You'll have opportunities to do one-on-one sessions. And so again, if you're interested in the programs, and it doesn't matter if you're a first-time applicant or you're going after phase 3, we will have panels available for everybody. So great event to take advantage of. And that is it. Thank you for attending. I think we've got about 5 minutes. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute and I can answer as many as possible. Or my email is right there. Feel free to reach out. Happy to talk to you via email as well. But let me see if there's any in the chat too.
Yeah, so there was 2 in the chat. So one of them was understanding that each agency is different and each solicitation is different. What's the average competition for each grant?
So it's about that 15% across all agencies. We actually, was it was last October, September at the national conference, we sat down with a bunch of agencies and we were trying to hash out this question because it comes up a lot. And generally it's about anywhere from, I would say 12 to like 18 or 19% win rate across the agencies. Obviously with STTR, the win rate's higher because less people are submitting proposals for that. And then even if you look at across some of the more popular agencies, the rate's a little different. And then actually, if you look at like Department of Defense, who has very specific topics, that can affect the win rate as well. If you have something that fits perfectly within a topic that nobody else, is covering, your chances are going to be much higher. So it's very contingent on a lot of different factors, but generally that's what we say is about 15%. Is there another question, Stephanie?
Yeah, so the next question is for review. What kind of due diligence is conducted?
Okay, and is this for the review by the agencies or the review you get before you submit? Would be the second touch on
agencies.
For the agencies, okay, yeah. So each agency does it differently. So some it's more internal to the agencies. The topic authors are going to have quite a bit of say in what gets funded. Others bring in an external review panel to go through proposals. It really depends. The one thing I would say about reviewers, and we talk about this more in our proposal writing webinars and workshops, is whether it's an internal review or they bring in external reviewers, they are limited by time, right? They do not have a lot of time to sit and read through your proposal. And so making sure your proposal is incredibly clear, it tells a compelling story, it hits everything that agency is looking for, you use figures and diagrams effectively. Those are the things that are going to stand out to a reviewer, because again, they don't have a lot of time. Oftentimes they get a huge stack of proposals that they have to review, and they're not going to have time to sit through and read extensively. And actually, I was just on the phone with a reviewer for the Air Force actually, and he was saying that it is very rare that he actually reads the entire proposal because he has so many, so he's skimming. And if you can't catch his attention and get to the main points, it can be really detrimental. So again, different process for every agency. And actually most of the agencies are really good about outlining what exactly their review process is on their website. So if you're interested in a specific agency, you can go to their site.
Awesome. And I got one more question for you. So
Yeah.
basically what you're saying is less is more, right? So you want to keep everything very clear, concise, to the point, and the least amount of words possible to create the right message and get the most clear, precise understanding of what you're applying for and who you are as an organization, what you bring to the table. Is that correct?
Yeah. And keep in mind, every single agency will have a page limit for how many pages. And if you go one word over that page limit, they'll throw it out. I mean, they're always looking for reasons to throw proposals out because again, they don't have time to review. So be very clear, be very concise. This is not the time to go on tangents. It's not the time to talk about how you're the best. I mean, you want to talk about how you're the best fit, but focus on what they're asking for in that solicitation. And usually in the solicitations, and this is with grant writing in general, you can pull out the sections and just bam, bam, bam. And then they're not looking for, a novel. They're looking for, should I fund this project, right? So just keep that in mind.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been extremely helpful.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. I can stay on for a couple extra minutes if people have questions. I see in the chat, does each state have fast funded programs? Most states have fast funded programs. And right now, I'm trying to think, it's up for bid right now. So there will be an additional if you want to call it cohort, so more states brought on, I would say in the September, October timeframe. And so most of the US should be covered. And then a lot of the FAST state, even if your state does not have a FAST site, PTACs often help with SBIR, SBDCs often help, and then even reach out to your local universities. They often have programs that can help with proposals too. So just, and if you have questions with that, shoot me an email. I'm happy to connect you to the most appropriate person in your state. Let's see. Anything? Okay, yeah. All right, any other question? You feel free to unmute yourselves too if you have questions on 3 years. Okay. All right. Well, I think with that, we will sign off. So again, this will be recorded. We will include the link in the follow-up email along with the slides. And if anybody has specific questions, again, please do reach out to me. I'm happy to chat with you.
A quick question.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anyone from the Texas FAST on the call today?
Oh, that's a good question. But BHO would be your point of contact in Texas. And if you're interested in connecting, I can connect you to him.
Thank you. If you could send me a message, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.